And one of the recent headlines is that about only 5% of Gen AI proof of concepts or initiatives end up in production in a way that has tangible impact on profit and loss, i.e. it generates something of material value to the company. And to be honest, it's not a surprise. And if you have well-curated data and demo, it will work perfectly. But when you get to real world, when you have messy information, incomplete information, complex systems, lots of variety of problems you need to solve, which means that we take a work on a counterparty that will take a week, maybe 30, 40 hours, and we will finish it in half an hour with the aid of the AI. But we have plenty of really good people and really good ideas, and now it's just about not just about getting them out there, to platforms like this and show the rest of the world that in Europe, through innovation is done.
My guest today in the Innovation Week videocast studio is Jan Tláskal, Chief Data Engineer at Galytix. We will talk about AI agents, especially in finance, about the future of AI agents, and also about the importance of data. So, Mr. Tlaskal, welcome and thank you for coming.
Hello, thank you for having me.
When I say your company creates AI agents for finance and insurance professionals, what does that exactly mean?
Yes. So we create agentic AI that delivers to clients tangible improvement in efficiency and in decision making. What does that mean is first of all, we operate only in certain industries, so we are focused on financial services. We work with financial institutions with their proprietary data, with deep knowledge, with deep domain knowledge to create a fit-for-purpose solution that actually works for the enterprise and integrates within their workflows.
Maybe before we dive deeper into Galytix, in general, what is the difference between traditional Gen AI and agentic AI?
Right. So there's no clear definition that everyone would agree on, but I will try to explain it in a way that I would believe most experts would agree on.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's try. So traditional Gen AI, those would be variants of the GPT architecture, the generative pre-trained transformers. So, everyone knows, also in public eye, the ChatGPT is probably the most common, but there are many other providers there and many other variants of this. And they are basically sequence completers. So you start a sequence, like in natural language, you say, my favorite animal is ... and it will guess cat or dog. It's very good at that. It came miles from this level. Now you can ask for a Shakespeare sonnet, and it will do one that a layman would be completely impressed by. It might not pass the expert lens of scrutiny, but the layman would definitely find it convincing. And so you can build quite narrow use cases for this that are quite powerful, but it tends to break down in places where you need reasoning, when you need reliability and repeatability, because it's fundamentally a probabilistic machine. And it's one side appears really smart, on the other side makes errors that a 5-year-old wouldn't make. And also its knowledge is fixed in time. It doesn't have fixed memory, or persistent memory. It cannot learn. So that would be limitations. And of course, this was noted by the community very early on. So you have extensions like trying to take the context, increase it by additional information. Maybe you heard about RAG when you retrieval augmented generation. When you also add additional tooling that allows the LM to access current data. That I will still call traditional. I would even call traditional Gen AI as if you chain multiple calls together in some kind of linear pipeline. Prompt A, result A, then do B or C depending on the result. So that I would still call traditional. And on the other hand, agentic AI is a system that's relying to an extent on these tools, but those tools are mostly taken as orchestrators, and again, there's no definition. But what most experts would probably agree on, that it would have the following properties: there will be some kind of planning. there will be introspection, there will be evaluation of intermediate steps and some kind of way to correct course, and most would also consider that it cannot be deterministic to be called an agent. It needs to have set of goals that it needs to pass, but how it goes there to pass those goals needs to be up to the AI to figure out. And the AI generally doesn't create the answer. The AI gets access to tools and data sources, mostly through APIs, to be able to basically experiment and devise the answer that actually fulfills the criteria. Yeah.
Maybe now we could talk about the current state of agentic AI, because we can read in media, etc., that the progression is slowing now. What do you think about that?
Yes, indeed. There's multiple studies or benchmark out there, or surveys where enterprises are being interviewed about their journey in adoption of AI. And one of the recent headlines is that about only 5% of Gen AI proof of concepts or initiatives end up in production in a way that has tangible impact on profit and loss, i.e. it generates something of material value to the company. And to be honest, it's not a surprise. I've been in this field for more than a decade, and even the early generations of machine learning on data science project, they would have the same problem. Getting from pilot to production is very hard. And we can talk about what are exactly the problems there, but it's fairly enough to spin up a POC, especially now when you can basically hook up to a chatbot, again create some additional enhancements of context with information, and hope that it will solve all the problems. And if you have well curated data and demo, it will work perfectly. But when you get to real world, when you have messy information, incomplete information, complex systems, lots of variety of problems you need to solve, and low tolerance for errors, then it breaks apart.
Okay, so now let's go into Galytix. We say that your products are in some kind of view extraordinary. Could you explain how?
Yeah, so we have three main product lines. One is called CreditX. That's focused on credit and risk managers in enterprises that need to evaluate credit rating quite frequently. And so, any bank that does lending fulfills that criteria. And so what we do, we automate the whole workflow. What does it mean by the agent that we develop collates all the information, does financial analysis on the counterparty, does financial spreading, which is mapping into a certain format that then the enterprise can use to fit in their rating models. We do a first draft of the credit memo, which is normally written by the credit analyst, and we generate statutory and other reporting as well, which means that we take a work on a counterparty that will take a week, maybe 30, 40 hours, and we will finish it in half an hour with the aid of the AI. Another thing that's second line of business is our second product is ClaimsX. That's aimed for insurance claims managers and specialists. And you can imagine when you need to settle a claim, let's say so it's a car accident, there's a lot of documentation that needs to come in. The documentation needs to be reviewed by the claims manager against the policy conditions, the contract that you have with the company, and the decision needs to be made whether you should be paid, to what extent, and what kind of action needs to be taken. Again, the ClaimsX does all the collation of the data from all the sources. That could be our claim system, it could be scanned PDFs, your scribble of how the accident looked like. It could be information from healthcare professionals. It could be police reports. All that needs to come together, and ClaimsX is going to extract that information. It's going to look for inconsistencies. It's going to look for completeness. It's going to summarize it for the claims manager. So when claims manager comes there to make a decision, everything's for them, prepared for them to make that decision. So they get to make a decision by single interaction with that claims case instead of being involved, throughout this whole life cycle. And so one of the principles that we follow is that instead of trying to automate, say, half of claims because they are sort of standard run-of-the-mill cases, and half of the claims would be completely manual, which is what a lot of other products are there. What we do is that we have the same approach to all claims, and the only difference is, does the AI has enough information to suggest settle, or it doesn't? Does it not have enough information and therefore needs to ask the professional for basically input?
Are these aspects you mention really unique? I mean, if you compare your services, your projects, your products with competition, how does it look like?
Yeah, so there are standard solutions which don't rely on Agentic AI, so we are very different in the approach, and there are artificial intelligence approaches which underestimate the level of scrutiny and data engineering and the level of engineering that needs to go in to prepare the information in such a way that you can actually do these use cases with high accuracy. So we are living in between in this space when on one side you have these traditional tools which work for some cases, but for other cases fall apart completely. On the other side you have these AI solutions which are probabilistic, which means error prone. So, and then again, in use cases like we talk about claims, it's not really acceptable to accept a claim that should not be paid. Yes, but and therefore you need to have a solution that doesn't hallucinate, that only takes the data that's relevant for the case, that doesn't miss information that needs to be taken. And now we achieve this by firstly using the cutting edge technology that's out there today, but also proper data engineering, proper software engineering practices, and human in the loop. And that's how we separate us from others. One thing there's a third product that we have, which we call DataX, and that's relevant to this point, is that that underpins all other implementations, and that's a product that's algorithmically through Gen AI aggregates data, cleans them up, enhances them with metadata, and puts them in a canonical structure that can be well used by other analytical use cases, but it's designed in a way that's very well used by other agents. And what we do is we take the raw data, we standardize it, and we also link it to business meaning. So the semantic information and the business meaning is not separate from the actual information, and then therefore you can then query the data on the semantic. You can query data semantically on the business meaning of the data rather than when it sits in a database or what system.
Okay, and what if I ask you, what's the difference between your agents, AI agents, and between the human analysts? Or is it the question human analysts versus AI agents, right? I
don't look at it as versus, because the intelligence that the agent can offer is very different from what a human brings in.
So this is more like cooperation?
Yes, because the agent can very easily automate lots of manual repetitive tasks, therefore create for the human more time to basically focus on high value tasks, but also can make the high value task much more efficient to perform. So that's what delivers the 10x improvement, because you don't need to spend half of your day doing repetitive stuff, and the stuff that's important, it's much more streamlined. So yeah, together, because the AI, at least today, is not able to do certain decisions on its own, especially if it doesn't have the information, the context that requires the experience of the human user.
You refer to yourself as one of the European leaders in this industry. How would you prove that?
Well, because we have partnered with multiple financial leaders, leaders in financial industry, right, with institutions, and we have many use cases running in production now, generating results for these firms. As we just talked about a study, less than 5% of use cases make it, and if you read that study a little bit more, you realize that almost all internally developed use cases fail. It's we are one of these proof points that partnering with expert external partner is the way to go if you want to generate real results.
Hello, I'm Luka Sadlacek. I'm the founder and director of Innovation Week. This year's Innovation Week is going to be very special. It's going to be the 10th year anniversary, and we're going to be inviting up to 300 speakers from abroad and from the Czech Republic. We're going to have really interesting hosts such as Sir Stephen Fry, then representative of Cambridge University, OpenAI, and dozens more. The main dates are going to be 9th and 10th of October at CSOB campus in Prague, and we're looking at 10,000 participants from across the world that will be joining us. You're very much welcome to join us as well, and you can already buy your ticket at innovationweek.ai. Looking forward to seeing you there.
And how did actually Galytix come about? How did you come up with the idea?
So we were founded in 2015. It's 10 years ago, and the original idea was about leveling the playing field between insurance and banking. So in banking, you would have tools that, like Bloomberg, for example, everyone had access to the same information, and it was more about what analytics and how smart you were about exploiting that information. Whereas in insurance, there were a lot of proprietary information or experience, and people were not looking very much what other players are doing. And the initial idea for Galytix was basically Bloomberg of insurance. And that was the initial spark. But once we started implementing this idea, we realized that what was really needed was algorithmic data engineering, being a real expert in processing of unstructured information, very high number of heterogeneous data sources, and that slowly and surely we realized that to solve this, you need lots of natural language processing and language modeling, and that sort of gradually basically pushed us into the direction of research and development in this area.
When we talk about the European innovations and European business, there are many people who say that there are almost no innovation in Europe. What would you say about that?
Well, it's certainly underfunded. I would say. I think there's a so maybe hot take is I think the current political situation globally might be actually really good for Europe in the sense that the decision makers and lawmakers realize that they cannot rely on foundational models that are hosted and developed in US and China. So I do believe there will be more interest and more push of capital investment into developments that are European-based, but historically that was not the case. Vast majority of capital was in San Francisco, to be honest. But we have the human capital there. There are lots of companies like ours, other small companies who are doing really interesting things. It's just they lack the capital backing and scale that companies like Anthropic and OpenAI have. But we have plenty of really good people and really good ideas, and now it's just about not just about getting them out there, to platforms like this and show the rest of the world that in Europe true innovation is done. So I think it's not visible rather than it not be. It's less visible, but it's not true that it's not done. Yeah.
Okay. And what is necessary to do, in your opinion, to improve the situation? You mentioned the access to the capital, to investment, etc.
Well, yes, that's the obvious answer. And regulation can help, of course. Interest from the industries to partner with local partners. And more visibility. I think that would be quite helpful.
You yourself worked in London in finance, and that's perhaps a bit surprising that the Galytix is a global company, but it still, at the same time, stays or remains in the Czech Republic. Why?
Right. Yes, you're right. So when we founded, we started in London. We also opened office in India and in Prague as well. And I think it's a good. So we always wanted to be global with global coverage, and I think Czech Republic in particular has this really good mix of highly educated people with potential that's somewhat untapped, but at the same time, it's not Wild West like if you go further east. Yeah. So I think it's a good balance of both. It's still a Western country, but still lots of untapped potential.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything what you missing in the Czech Republic in the terms of creating startups, buildings, such companies, etc.?
Yeah, I think it's a smaller market. That's and you cannot change that. That's a virtue of the size of the country. But that has improved a lot recently because we have lots of talent traveling from other parts of EU and other parts of the world to work in Prague and in Czech Republic in general. So there's gradually more and more access to talent in terms of breadth. So historically, just access to talent was that all companies would be fighting for very small pool of resources. High quality resources, but small pool of resources. So that would be one, and I guess that's improving. I would say organically, and inorganically, I think subsidies and programs from the government that would actually make it more attractive for people to come and join to work in Czech Republic compared to Paris or London. Yeah.
And what about to creating a single market in the European Union? Because of course it practically it is, but there are many obstacles.
Yep.
So if it could be helpful to deepen single market, to be more easy to operate in every countries, in every European countries. What do you think about it?
Right. We have presence in a lot of other European countries as well, and I don't feel there are too many obstacles to cross once you reach certain size. Creating a branch or on a subsidiary in other companies so you can start hiring, and it's not a big deal when you reach certain size. But when you are a small startup of 6 people and having basically no finance, no nothing like that, it's impossible. So, yeah, I would agree that would help the sort of the embryonic startups to grow faster and be more visible and have access to clients. Yeah, at our sort of level of maturity, I don't find that we are constrained or confined by the regulation or the level of integration within the European market. It's much harder to go outside Europe. That's a different question. Yeah, just tax invoicing, all of that is a nightmare.
And how were the biggest obstacles for you in building your company?
It's maybe cliche, building the right team. It is the hardest part. Especially sort of in data science and AI engineering space, you're hiring for very technical, very highly skilled, very opinionated people. So building a team of people that will gel together, recognize each other's contribution, and not being in meetings when you have 7 people and 11 opinions it's a challenge. That took us a long time to find the right formula, the mix between the sort of the research type of people and sort of traditional software engineers, people who would work with infrastructure and just create the right mix of capabilities so you can innovate but also deliver enterprise-grade products. And
of course, I'm interested in the future of Galytix. What are your plans?
Yeah, so we are committed on the agentic AI journey. I personally believe that even if we see leveling of the foundational models and their capability, there's minimum another decade of extremely fast innovation in the space of using these models and exploit them fully. For example, within the paradigm of agentic AI. So I think we will see a lot of new applications of the agentic AI paradigm. Maybe not to a level that some are selling it, in a way that the agent will observe your behavior and book your holiday and do a better job than you would. But there's just so many tasks in enterprises that can be automated to the benefit of the whole company. It's just the companies, the enterprises, they need to be ready to transform their workflows rather than just expect them to neatly fit in what's already existing. And it's our job to create tooling that enables that. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Recently, you became a partner of Innovation Week.
Yeah.
Why did you choose the Innovation Week as a partner?
Right. So there are internal reasons and external reasons. First of all, Innovation Week, we think is a very valuable conference with outreach to both lay audience and a professional audience. And second of all, it was also internally for us time to get more out there with products that we built and try to start building the brand, and also make sure that people know that things like, really cool things are happening, in the country and in Czech Republic, and of course, collocation makes it easier. Yeah, so we are working with other conferences as well, but this particular one I'm super excited about because of the location, because of the coverage of the layman audience, openness to everybody, but at the same time reach to professional audiences, and because it's a broader conversation than just let's say financial services, sort of kind of dry conversation about interest rates and ratings. Yeah, there are a lot of other very 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 important and interesting advances in AI that will be showcased there, and we will be more than happy and privileged to be next to them.
So it means that you will present your services in the Innovation Week.
Yes, and against common sense, it will be all live demos, things that you can try out for yourself and see whether that would be useful to you as a professional or even going one level further and integrating them with your current workflow.
Okay, so thank you very much for the interview and see you there.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for having me.